Hey folks, before we get started, I just wanted to tell you, you can unlock unlimited access to political news, commentary, opinion, and a whole lot more at inforum.news/port for only 99 cents a month for your first 3 months. Hurry, get this limited time offer at inforum.news/port now. This podcast is brought to you by the North Dakota Petroleum Foundation. From heating our homes, empowering our vehicles, to cell phones, clothing, and medical equipment, oil and natural gas makes everyday life better. North Dakota Oil and Natural Gas, advancing the possibilities. Learn more at ndpetroleumfoundation.org.
Welcome to Plain Talk. It's Rob Port, and if I sound a little different, it's because we're not reporting as we usually record. We're actually at the North Dakota Democratic 2022 convention, which just wound up. It's just the fun stuff now, the pub crawl and all those other social activities the parties always do around the convention. We're at the Clarion Hotel in Minot, and just came through 2 days of endorsing candidates and doing the party platform and everything, and of course Chad Oban joining me, who former executive director of this party, obviously always long time involved in North Dakota Democratic Party. Chad, what's your reaction to what you saw today?
Yeah, I think it's a unique convention. It's probably the most unique convention I've ever been at. The fact that it was hybrid, the fact that there weren't a bunch of announced candidates prior, sort of driving turnout. If I'm a Democrat, which I am leaving Minot this weekend, I'm excited about Trygve Hammer's campaign for Public Service Commission. I thought Mark Haugen stepping up for U.S. Congress was a pretty big deal and helped the Dems avoid a disaster with Raleigh Reimers being the only person running. And the fact that he's a great candidate also helped. And then I was really, I thought Katrina Christensen's speech speech was fabulous today. So those would be the three things I sort of took away. I think the energy or lack thereof is a problem. We knew that was going to be a problem going in with the convention in Minot without declared candidates. But I would be really excited to get behind Trygve Hammer, Mark Haugen, and some of these other candidates.
I think you're right. Let's take these one at a time. Let's talk about Trygve Hammer, because I'll be honest, as people who read my columns know, that was the one who intrigued me the most. I thought some of the things that he said during his acceptance speech were interesting. Now, obviously, once they get on the campaign trail, once the candidates start challenging one another, once we start talking policy, it's a different ball game. But I thought, first of all, he's got an impressive resume.
Absolutely.
Served in the Marine, was deployed to Iraq. At one point was, I'm going to butcher his job title. I think he was an envoy to the U.S. Embassy in
He had
Rome.
a bunch of really important-looking military jobs.
Right. He was a speech writer, but also he was a commercial pilot.
Oil field
worked
worker.
in the oil field worker, middle school history teacher, all from Velva, North Dakota. So that's all very, very cool. And I don't know. I think first of all, that's a very compelling background. I think a lot of North Dakotans are going to look at it and say, hey, I like that guy. He's also very personable. I've spoken to him. He's a cool guy. I think North Dakotans like to meet their candidates. They like to shake their candidate's hand. They're going to meet this guy. They're going to like him.
Yeah, and he looks good. I mean, he looks like a guy who should be running for office in the state of North Dakota.
He looks like a candidate.
And I was thinking this afternoon, after listening to Josh Beauche's keynote speech, that every Democrat who's running for office or thinking about running for office needs to watch Trygve Hammer's speech and watch Josh Beauche's speech from this afternoon, because I thought their messages were pitch perfect. You can't find an extreme thing in either one of those speeches. I just thought those two really nailed in terms of messaging what Democrats need to be talking about.
I think that's right. Now, speaking specifically what Trygve was talking about, some of the things he hit on are things that I'm talking about as a conservative, which is he had kind of this chant, and now I'm forgetting it, but it was basically like, if you're tired of reasonable Republicans being marginalized and called rhinos, send a message, vote Democrat, right?
Yeah.
No, as a conservative, am I prepared to vote Democrat? No.
Yeah.
Am I thinking, gosh, has he put his finger on a real problem that Republicans face? Absolutely.
If you're sick of legislators finding things on Facebook and putting in a bill, vote for a Democrat. I mean, he was right on with all of those things that he was talking about. and sort of showing the extreme nature of some members of the Republican Party.
To win an election in North Dakota, you got to get Republicans to vote for you,
Yeah.
right? That's just the way it is. So he is touching on some things that I think a lot of Republicans are going to hear that and think, gosh, I see that problem too.
And listen, here's the thing. If I'm a Republican, average voter in North Dakota, is it really going to, having one Democrat in office, to send a message for balance and maybe a little bit different thinking, and maybe send a message to the ultra-conservative Republicans who are maybe taking your party down a bad path? Trygve Hammer might be the guy you're willing to vote for.
I think that's absolutely right. Let's see. The other one, Katrina Christensen really impressed me. Now, running for federal office is an additional degree of difficulty on top of the difficulties that candidates already have. Now, that was actually a competitive race. She faced a challenger from Andrew Alexander Barble. That was his name. And that was a little tense, that moment. He decided, and I don't think he was trying to be malicious or anything, but I would say a blunder.
It was uncomfortable.
It was uncomfortable because he spoke in what he said was Mandan and Lakota language. There were some Native American delegates who objected to, first of all, objected to him doing it. Second of all, said he wasn't getting it right. And I'm going to take their word for it. I'm certainly not in a position to judge. So that was an uncomfortable moment.
And I thought the delegate who at the end basically said, hey, if you're going to try to speak our language, don't try to teach yourself. Go and talk to an expert. So, yeah, that was very uncomfortable. And like you, I didn't think Mr. Varvel was trying to be offensive or anything like that, but it was a blunder to probably even try in that sort of environment.
And and again, I'm not trying to be mean, because I have a certain amount of respect for anybody who's going to take a shot, right? Because that's kind of the American experiment. Anybody can run for one of these offices, barring some very minimal qualifications that you have to meet. Anyone can run. But we see a lot of candidates run who really don't have any business running.
Well, one of the things that I really like, so there's that sort of uncomfortable blunder, and then Katrina absolutely brought it in her speech. I thought her speech was professional. This is a first-time candidate who sort of stood in there and did a great job. I thought one of the things that she said in her speech, basically, you can't just say you're going to do something. You need to go and actually do it. I think that's something that we're hearing from the far right about John Oban, in the same way that he's just become sort of a cog or just a career politician. I thought she did a pretty good job.
I thought it was a little funny saying she doesn't think Rick Becker's going to win the primary either, which I thought that was actually kind of funny.
Yeah.
But
let's be clear. She got into the race to run against John Oban. It wasn't because she thought she might have an opportunity.
Now, when I hear some of those things, those are good. Well, I wrote my column. I kind of called them bromides, right? Because every challenger to incumbent says he or she has lost touch with the people. Yep. They're an empty suit. Like, at some point, she's going to have to follow it up with some real substance.
Absolutely, and I get the impression. She's a smart person.
She's an engineer.
She's an engineer
at the University of Jamestown.
Yeah, so I have a feeling she's going to bring some solutions. From a purely political sort of, she delivered a good message. She was a professional speaker. People seemed into her speech. I was really impressed. I didn't necessarily expect to be impressed on that one.
It was a good speech. She brought her whole family with too, which is I understand that's kind of a rote political move, but I don't know. Like, I'm a sap, and I'm a dad. I have kids, so I don't know when the candidate brings like the happy family with them. I like that.
Were you watching the family during the speech?
Yeah,
oh my goodness! I had a tough time not dropping a couple tears when you saw her kids watching her so proudly.
Listen, I used to get teared up when I'd watch I didn't like the Obama presidency. Yep. I would get teared up when that picture of him, like he was doing bumper. President Obama, I don't think was he president then? Maybe he was candidate. I don't know. But he's in a bumper car with his little girls. They're not little anymore, but they were then. And it just I loved that picture, right?
The dad moments, the spouse moments, those kind of relatable things. I'm not embarrassed to say Barack Obama made me cry a lot because of those kind of things.
The tough thing, and I think again, you can talk about has he lost touch or whatever. John Button's still pushing the vote buttons in the Senate the way most North Dakotans want most of the time.
Absolutely. But if you're going to run against John Oban, I think she found some things that she can run on. Is she going? I don't know that she has any chance of winning, but I think that she can get a pretty compelling story out there. I also thought, transitioning to Mark Haugen, running for Congress, I thought Mark Haugen bringing up Kelly Armstrong, voting against the infrastructure bill when both Republican senators voted for it, talking about specific dollars for bridges and roads and all those things. Again, I think that it's an uphill battle, incredibly uphill battle. That's a smart thing, though. It gets Democrats out of this sort of fringy extremism that people think of Democrats. He's talking about roads as the founding member of Plow the Damn Roads caucus. I like when people are talking about roads and bridges and those kind of things. And Mark Haugen's going to be a solid candidate.
I like it when campaigns are about those things. That's what they should be about, really. And listen, everybody likes Mark Haugen, by the way. When I was sitting in the audience kind of texting some of my Republican friends saying, hey, it's going to be Mark Haugen, because Mark actually told me this morning that he had decided last night that he was going to get in the race. And I think the reason why is Roland Reimers, who's this kind of long time, I don't want to call him a libertarian, because I think the libertarians kicked him out too. But a gadfly,
political nomad,
right? Kind of all over. But he was at the convention. He saw it. Somebody did nominate him, and so he got to get up and give a speech and stuff. But nobody in the audience voted for him. But I think that's why Mark got in, is they didn't want, by some odd turn of events, the convention to endorse someone like Mr. Reimers, who I think clearly doesn't represent Democrats. But everybody likes Mark. I mean, when I was texting everybody, they're like, "Oh, Mark, he's such a nice guy.
Yep.
We like him." And I think that's it. I think he'll run a very vigorous campaign. But I think it'll be a respectful campaign with a lot of integrity.
Well, and let's remember when he ran for state treasurer 2 years ago, Chris Kramer, Kevin Kramer's wife, endorsed him against Tom Beadle. Lori Hintz, as you told me.
The Republican National Committee woman also endorsed him.
Yeah, and I think he's a unique Democrat. He's very openly pro-life, which is sort of unique in this polarized world. But he's also, anti-death penalty, wants to take care of children, birth through death. I mean, he's social justice, strong Catholic. Mark's a great guy, and Democrats should be thanking their lucky stars that he was willing to pick this up today. And I think I told you earlier, the person who told me that Mark was running was Congressman Kelly Armstrong, because he'd heard from you.
Yeah.
It was like full circle, small North Dakota moment earlier from the convention.
Well, that was the thing. Like I was kind of like, letting everybody know, and I was kind of feeling them out. Like, what do you think as the incumbent? What do you think of this is your challenger now? So that was kind of funny that Kelly. And the funny thing was, Kelly then texted me and said, "What's his phone number? I want to text him congratulations."
Yep.
Which
is the most Kelly Armstrong thing I've ever heard.
Which is funny, because when Mark came off the stage, I said, I think Congressman Armstrong was going to text you and congratulate you. He goes, "Oh, he did?" And he pulled out his phone and he goes, "Oh, sure enough, he did."
North Dakota,
welcome to North Dakota. Okay, so all that, let's see. Fintan Dooley for Agriculture Commissioner. Your thoughts?
I don't think Fintan Dooley is going to be a very good candidate. I think that it's one that I might leave blank.
Really?
Yeah.
You wouldn't vote for Doug Goring?
I don't know. I just know that I'm not in love with either one of the candidates. How's that sound? Don't be putting me on the spot.
It's putting you on the spot. Okay,
here.
Fair enough. They have Fintan Dooley for Agriculture Commissioner.
Yeah.
Tim Lamb, last minute nominee he was the last action other than they tabled the others. Secretary of State Tax Commissioner. That's going to be up to the party's executive committee.
Yeah, it was pretty clear that Dave Thompson wanted to run for attorney general, but had some health issues.
Right.
Dave Thompson was the Democrat candidate in 2018 against Wayne Stenjum. I know that he'd thought about running again, had a quadruple bypass, I think he said.
I think he said because he gave the nominating speech for Tim Lamb.
Yep.
It said in his speech he was frustrated that he couldn't run again.
Yeah.
He's bringing up a lot of issues that we've heard, frankly, a lot of. I mean, I've been hearing
10 years worth of it.
I've been hearing him make this argument since circa 2012 campaign that, these candidates that are on the Industrial Commission who also take campaign contributions from people who work in industries that are also regulated by the Industrial Commission, that this is corruption and this is bribery. I understand that that's his feeling about it. I just don't think a lot of people agree with it.
Yeah, the voters aren't eating that menu item.
Well, neither are the courts, frankly.
Yeah. Well, and again, I go back to Josh Brochet's speech today, Trygve Hammer's speech this morning. Those are the messages that can relate to North Dakotans, and if you're a Democrat, that's the message you should. Talking about public education, responsible energy development, responsible budgeting, taking care of those closest to us. I mean, those are the issues we got to be talking about, and sort of, I hope if there's corruption, we'll weed it out.
I just have a hard time believing that it's corruption to disclose a campaign contribution. Like at some point, we have a participatory form of government,
Right.
which means you and I, like we elect people, but we're also allowed to participate. I get to participate in the campaigns. I can engage in free speech. I can make contributions. I can volunteer and do all those things to help the candidates that I want win. And once they're in office, I can show up in committee testimonies. I
Yep.
can send them letters. I can write letters. I can do all sorts of things to influence that process, right?
I'm pro-transparency. That's
Right.
where I'm at. If we know these things are happening, then voters can make a decision on if they think it's right or not.
If Governor Burgum or some other elected official showed up with a tinfoil wrapped brick of hundreds in their freezer that they got from somebody that they took action for, then yes, that is corruption.
Yep.
But it's not corruption for the oil industry to say, gosh, this person will regulate us in the way that we want to be regulated. We're going to support that person's campaign. To me, that's democracy.
Yeah, and again, I'm all for transparency. I think we should actually have more transparency in our elections in terms of where money is being spent in campaigns. I think we can do a better job of that, the way the federal government does, in terms of you have to report expenditures in their entirety rather than just categories, I think is the way the state law is right now. But yeah, again, I can't say enough about Trygve Hammer, Josh Boucher's speech. Listen to them, follow their lead.
Josh Boucher's speech was very good. Do they have the recordings online?
I don't know. I assume they will, but I don't know that for sure. I know Josh's was being recorded by somebody else,
right.
So I assume that it will be.
I get a lot of flack for supposedly turning Democrat, which I tell you I have not. I will tell you from the perspective of I think that Republicans need to they need to work for it, right? Republicans need to be challenged, need to work for it. I think a significant amount of the problems that the North Dakota Republican Party is having right now have their roots in the fact that the Republicans don't feel challenged.
Right.
They have no fear.
And I think, we knew going into this convention, and I think there's some sort of tea leaves being dropped over the last couple of weeks that attendance wasn't going to be really strong at this convention. I've been thinking a lot about that, and often attendance at these things, I think the Republicans are probably the same way, are candidate driven. Right? So by not having candidates announced, in 2012 you had Heidi Heitkamp and Ryan Taylor. In 2014 you had Ryan Taylor. 2016 there weren't any candidates, and it was a pretty lame sort of convention. No offense to the candidates in 2016. 2018 again you had Heidi Heitkamp and Max Schneider and Kylie Overson and Josh Boucher driving their friends and family and supporters to these conventions. That didn't happen this time, and that's not the fault of the chair, the party staff, that kind of thing. At some point, there are a lot of people in the state that I usually see every 2 years at these conventions that weren't here today or this weekend. And at some point, if we want different government as citizens, as progressive citizens in the state, you got to step up.
I will say one thing that I wrote about, because in 2016, Doug Burgum ran. And the big thing in the primary, because it was him versus Stenham, and so the big thing and I was writing a lot about it, was that we have an open primary. And I argued that there were going to be a lot of Democrats who were willing to cross for it to be Doug Burgum to be the nominee in 2016. And I even went back after because you can look at the number of ballots who were cast on for the Democratic ticket and the number cast for the Republican ticket. In years past, that runs around 2-1 in favor of Republicans. That year it was 5-1. And so I argued at the time, Democrats, you better be careful because your people are leaving and they're becoming Republicans. Well, and I know that seems weird right now because we're talking all the time about this wing of the North Dakota Republican Party that has become very, very extreme. But I think on the other hand, if you look on the other more moderate side of the party, I'm starting to see some participation from people who I thought were Democrats.
There was a time when I know there's candidate recruitment that took place in many districts in this state where an independent-minded person would potentially run as a Democrat because it was easier to get elected in some districts as a Democrat.
Sure.
Now, if you want to get elected to office, you very often have to be a Republican.
But for a few enclaves around the state.
Exactly right. And, I saw a comment on your Facebook page from a Fargo Democrat who basically said, I don't participate in statewide stuff.
I think we could say Linda Boyd.
Yeah, and I'm glad that the diehards still do it. Well, Linda, I hope if you're listening, the Democrats need you. They need people like you to be participating. And it's hard, man. It is hard. And the people in there who come to these things every 2 years, and they're the ones out raising money and knocking on doors, they're tired. And so I think more Democrats need to get engaged in this stuff if they want to turn things around.
Last comment, again, talking about a lot of the problems that are happening in the Republican Party. I look at here in Minot, and all the time I'm telling people the reason why the sort of Bastiat wing of the party took over in Minot is because the moderate people stopped showing up. And the reason why is because I think the ballot is a tactic. Every meeting goes past midnight. Everything is point of order. They're going to drill down all this minutia, all this obnoxious stuff. And people just, I don't have time for this. I give up. And, I mean, really, I think in some ways, I think that's already happened to the North Dakota Democratic Party. And I think it's starting to happen to the Republicans.
Well, yeah, and I think, again, there was a time when I started in politics, so late 90s, early 2000s, when Kent Byron and Earl were in office, often younger people who wanted to get involved in federal government or, jobs or whatever, it was good to be a Democrat because that's the way it worked. Now, if you want to work in government, you want to run for office, you want to be successful, it's to be a Republican. And not to say that people are like selling out to be Republicans, but if you're on the fence and you can go one way or the other, it's hard to argue that you should be running as a Democrat or engaging in the Democratic Party. With all that being said, I actually thought this convention went better than I thought it was going to when I came over here. I'm sort of pumped about a couple of the candidates, and I'm hearing more and more about legislative candidates that are running that might be competitive. And at the end of the day, winning creates momentum. Democrats have to figure out a way to start winning some races at the local level or state level to create some momentum, to make it so people want to be involved. They want to be part of it.
Want more political news like this? Visit inforum.news/port to get 3 months of unlimited access to our news network for only 99 cents a month. Don't wait. Get this limited time offer at inforum.news/port now.